All right. Can everyone see my screen? Just thumbs up. All right. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We're really excited to share with you some community-driven goals and potential projects for the Cheers area. So I'm just going to quickly kind of go through our agenda for the evening. So we're going to go through a short, well, not really a short, but a presentation that's going to walk through, some of just an overview of what Cheers is today, especially for those of you who might be joining us for the first time. So I just want to give you an overview of Cheers, and then we're going to go into how we've developed the concepts that we'll be going through. And those concepts are kind of organized around the themes of touch the water, play at the shore, and connect with nature. And within each of these, we're going to have some interactive polling questions that are going to, kind of ask you for your preference. And then at the very end, we're going to break out into some breakout groups for Q&A and facilitated discussion. So if you have any questions in the middle of the presentation, kind of hold on to those until you go into your breakout groups. You'll have an opportunity to ask your facilitators within those groups any of those questions that you might have had during the presentation. And then another thing, just as kind of a reminder in general Zoom housekeeping, your ability to unmute yourself has been disabled at this time. You will be able to unmute yourself when you go into the breakout group. But if you run into any issues during the course of the Zoom meeting, you can chat with me directly and I'll try to troubleshoot any of those issues that you might have. Whoops. So with that, I'm going to kick it off. So we wanted to kind of pause before we really explore some of these options for the study area and go over a quick refresher of the Cheers project. So what is Cheers? So Cheers is the Cleveland Harbor Eastern Embayment Resilience Study, which is a year-long effort to create a plan that improves access, connects communities to the lakefront, and preserves the long-term health of Lake Erie. So the study is especially important for our communities and ecosystem as we consider how climate change is going to impact the area and the lake in the coming decades. So to kind of orient you to our study area, it's roughly bounded by the Burke Lakefront Airport to the west, the Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve to the east, and extends out to the Breakwall and back to I-90. But keep in mind, as you're looking at these recommendations, we're also looking at community connections back into the adjacent neighborhoods, back towards St. Clair Avenue. So the folks that are involved in the study, and you'll be hearing from a couple of them today, it's a partnership between 5 agencies. It's funded through a grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. The project partners include the City of Cleveland, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, or ODNR, ODOT, the Port, and Cleveland Metro Parks. So this diagram kind of gives you an idea of the complementary goals that all of these partners are bringing to the project. So I'll just go kind of around in order. So the city is really looking at how can we improve access from the adjacent neighborhoods, create a more equitable distribution of recreation assets. ODNR is really focused on how do we improve aquatic restoration areas and maximize natural habitats. Metro Parks is looking at how to connect their existing park spaces that they already manage along the lakefront, create go-to destinations, and really increase the natural areas along the lakefront. And then ODOT is looking at how they can protect their critical infrastructure, I-90, and improve safety for folks along the lakefront. The Port, lastly, the Port is looking at how to beneficially use dredge material and support the city's overall goals. So the team, I'll introduce myself as part of the team slide. We have WRT, so we're an urban design, planning, architecture, and landscape architecture firm located out of Philadelphia. I'm the project manager, Mary Morton, so I'll be kind of emceeing tonight's presentation. We also have on our team Great Ecology and KS. KS is bringing some really great local engineering expertise, and Great Ecology is bringing some ecological resource planning to the team. So we've been working closely with a lot of the partners throughout this effort. We've been engaging with the community since spring of last year. So at this point, I want to kind of kick it over to the director of Cleveland City Planning Commission, Freddie Collier, who's going to walk you through a little bit of that process and some of the engagement events that we've been performing in the last year or so.
It's great. Thank you, Mary. And thank you all for coming out. A couple of things I want to highlight with respect to the project team and stakeholders. In addition to the project partners, we've engaged a large number of agencies, nonprofits, community organizations who also are partnering with the project team. With respect to the process, can go to the process slide. We're in the home stretch of the process, having completed the existing conditions analysis and technical evaluation of the study area. We've been engaging with the communities and organizations since spring of 2020. And the goal was really to better understand the needs and desires of the community. We also was really looking at how we can maximize the connection to the adjacent neighborhoods, which is extremely critical for the process. We also really worked hard with respect to the process. And as you can see, this is basically a timeline that shows you kind of where things are and how much further we have to go. And the one thing I really want to highlight to everyone is engagement is critical, as you can see at these various intervals. And I do want to emphasize that we see the Metro Parks, the city, and all the partners engagement not just being part of the planning process, but continuing to engage around the waterfront post the planning process. So that's very critical for us. Next slide, please. All right, so just a quick recap of on-site interactions and feedback that we've been getting from the various partners. There were 4 tour routes in one of our walk shops. We had 3 time slots. There were about 87 registrants who participated that, 12 plus volunteered. We definitely followed the COVID-19 protocols with respect to that engagement. Some of the takeaways included a more targeted engagement, surveys and outreach and community groups were very important for this. We wanted to make sure that there was more workshops that can be scheduled that's based on group interest. There was a lot of interest around this, and obviously weather is an important factor in that. Next slide, please. These images kind of show some of the takeaways from the workshops. With that community engagement, a lot of people love the views. Many people who don't get an opportunity to come down and experience the water really got an opportunity to see what it was like to feel, see, touch, and take in everything that the waterfront had to offer. There was a conversations around the ability to connect with the nature preserve, a sense of peacefulness. People wanted a safer experience with the waterfront. And when I talk about safety, I'm not just talking about with respect to feeling safe, but making sure that the infrastructure and everything was safe for people to navigate. That was critically important. Also, more places to touch and connect with the water, more open and flexible spaces for like events and gatherings. That slide with the young woman with the baby is very telling of really what we want to achieve. I'm going to pass it back over now to Mary to talk to you a little bit about the resiliency component of the plan.
Great, thank you so much, Freddie. So I'll just flip through these really quick. These kind of align with what Freddie was talking about. We had folks kind of mark up maps when they were down along the lakefront about their comments, places where they felt safe, things, ideas for what we could do in the future. And these were incredibly helpful as we were developing these concepts that you're going to see in the next few slides. So here's one that shows 55th Street, 72nd Street, and these align with a lot of the photos that you saw of our great walk shop participants. And these are all available online as well if you want to dig into this and see some of the comments in more detail. So just a quick plug as well. We also had a virtual scavenger hunt that accompanied this for folks that weren't able to join our workshops, either didn't have time or didn't feel comfortable joining. This is actually still live, but folks can explore each of these individual sites independently and fill out a survey with some of their thoughts about what they think about different areas and be entered to win a gift card. So if you haven't yet participated, here's my plug to please go participate because we're still giving out gift cards. So before we dive into the concepts, I really want to step back and think about what we mean when we say resiliency. And we covered this in one of our really early meetings, but we're really framing this around 3 lenses: the environment, the economy, and the community. So in order to bring the resiliency of the lake into focus in this study, we're creating strategies that allow the shoreline to adapt while preserving habitat, creating a buffer to protect critical infrastructure, and providing more spaces for the community to enjoy nature and the lake. So the goal in all of this is really to bring all of these elements into balance. So we've developed 3 concepts that include a series of goals and strategies that dial up different types of experiences on the site. So these are framed around the experience of touching the water, playing at the shore, and connecting with nature. And each of these goals and projects that you'll see were developed based on that community input from the workshops, our engagement activities very early on with our first public meeting and our survey that went out. And all of these experiences include goals that connect people and communities to the lake, program spaces that meet the needs of the community, protect natural systems that enhance the well-being of the lake and its communities, and celebrate the legacy, history, and significance of the lake. So you might be asking, how do we get there? So here's our little roadmap to creating a resilient lakefront. So what you'll see here is that what I just spoke about, we're maximizing the experience for each of these larger concepts that all have elements that connect to people, nature, and water. They all have a unique mix of projects and all provide multiple benefits. So now we're at the stage where we're asking folks to vote on projects and ideas. So as you explore these options and we walk you through these, remember that these are sketches or illustrations of a long-term vision for the lakefront. We know that we cannot build all of these projects, and that's why we need your help tonight to really prioritize what's important. So once we go through this voting process, which is taking place both here tonight and also online, it's been live for over a week and it will continue to be live for a few weeks after this meeting. We'll use those results to create a hybrid concept. This concept will combine the highly rated projects and goals into one concept that includes the long-term vision, as well as short-term interventions like visitor amenities that could include benches, seating, restrooms, and fishing areas that enhance the lakefront's existing assets. So just remember, you're not voting on one individual experience or concept. We're asking you to really prioritize the projects and ideas that you think are most crucial or impactful to the future of the lakefront. And just as a disclaimer, as you look at these, think of these as a picture on a cereal box. They're enlarged to show texture and are really just being used to highlight what these ideas are that we've heard from the community. And we're going to be moving through this process. We're actually moving through that right now to work out circulation and parking and all of kind of the nuts and bolts that will be required to create that final concept. So keep that in mind, that we're behind the scenes working on some of these regulatory issues that we'll need to iron out before that final concept is presented. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, William Wellington, and he's going to walk us through each of the concepts.
Thanks, Mary. So before we actually start going through the concepts, I think Mary alluded that there's a little bit of an interactive element to tonight's engagement. So the first thing we want to figure out is, where is everyone from and how are you guys connected to the Cheers area? So if you're on Zoom, you should be seeing a pop-up poll right now. And if you can just fill that out, we'll kind of take stock on who's joining us tonight.
So we almost have everyone voted. Give me one more second. Waiting on a couple more people. All right. I think almost everyone has voted. So I'll go ahead and end that and share the results. So can everyone see that?
Great. Well, welcome everyone. So as Mary said, I'm going to go through our 3 experiences. And these 3 concepts will each come with a slide to look over the goals, to see what the projects being proposed are. And then we're going to give everyone a chance to also vote on your favorite project for each experience. And so starting with Touch the Water. The Touch the Water experience maximizes water-based recreation and opportunities to view and interact with Lake Erie. The goals of this experience are to create more opportunities to touch and engage with water, to provide a diversity of water-based recreation opportunities such as fishing, wading, and water sports, to enhance and create new wetland areas, protected coves, and to protect infrastructure while providing new habitat space. And finally, to honor the cultural, historic, and environmental significance of the water and its connection to the nearby communities. So you're going to see this slide over and over again. It's even my background. And so this is just the study area as it is. Like Mary said, these are just illustrations that we're using to kind of throw together an idea of how these concepts will look. So looking at the Touch the Water experience, we're looking at something that will transform the shoreline into a place with fewer barriers between you and the water. A large protective cove and softened edges will be created with dredge material, and each of the elements of Touch the Water allows for habitat restoration and new recreation experiences. So the next slide, you'll see these kind of called out in the colored areas with the leaders, and we're going to go through each one of these concepts individually. So the first one is the shore. And you'll also notice that we wanted to assign each of the projects their goals that they're working closest to. So you'll see on each one of these little icons for connect and program or celebrate. And so for the shore, this is the first project we'll explore. And it provides a new water-based experience along the eastern lakefront that many community members requested. The creation of the land from dredge material allows for a safe place for visitors to wade and walk down and interact with the water. Second project is the Boardwalk. So the Boardwalk project builds a new trail experience that brings visitors closer to the water with raised boardwalk trails that hug the shoreline and cross through wetlands and nearshore habitat areas. The third experience is the Blueways. So the Blueways imagine new north-south neighborhood connections that build in green infrastructure and stormwater management to create safer and more attractive access points for adjacent communities. And you'll see that in each one of these concepts, there is some sort of neighborhood connection, and it'll focus on the overall theme. The fourth project is the launch. The launch responds to the community's desire to have more spaces for water sports, and in particular, places for visitors to rent and learn how to operate watercraft. The launch provides a centralized location for renting equipment and also a place to learn in a protective cove before venturing out further into the lake. The cove is the fifth project. The shape of the cove and the creation of new land from dredge material provides space for water habitat restoration and the creation of new nearshore and in-water habitat. This space will provide habitats for fish, for fishes, more piers for fishing, and shoreline areas for interacting with the water, as well as protecting I-90 and other critical infrastructure. And the final project of Touch the Water is the hills. The hills provide a new vantage point and way to experience the lakefront. We heard from many community members that what they love most about the lakefront now is the natural beauty and expansive views. The hills provide a new promontory that would provide panoramic views to the lake and of downtown, as well as protecting new recreation spaces from the sounds of the highway. So as a refresher, we're going to go through the 6 projects of Touch the Water: the shore, the boardwalk, Blueways, the launch, the cove, and the hills. And we're going to launch another poll now for you to choose which one is your favorite or which one is most important to you.
You'll also have an opportunity to vote on which goals you think are most important in this scenario. All right, looks like we have a pretty good number of folks who have voted. I'll give folks a couple more seconds in case they haven't hit their button yet. All right. All right, so it looks like the top 2 goals are create more opportunities to touch and engage with water, enhance and create new wetland areas that protects infrastructure, and then the most favorited project is the boardwalk, followed closely by the cove.
Right. All right, so the next concept we're going to look at is the play at the shore experience. So the play at the shore experience maximizes existing park spaces and builds a new space for flexible and passive recreation while creating more opportunities for gathering along the shore. The goals of this experience are to connect and unite existing park spaces and improve accessibility from neighboring communities, to provide new spaces for informal and formal activities and events, to use dredge material to create more park space and habitat areas to buffer critical infrastructure, and to create places where the community can celebrate nature and appreciate the cultural and historic significance of the lake. So once again, that was the existing conditions, and this is the overall concept for play at the shore. So this experience looks at extending the existing shoreline into a place with more opportunities for you to be active and engaged with the lakefront. Using dredge material to create a contiguous park space provides the community with new spaces to gather and play, while also shielding critical infrastructure from the elements such as wave action and storms. Once again, we're going to go through each of these projects, but you can see highlighted what the main projects associated with Play at the Shore are. So the first is the lawn. The lawn responds to the community's desire for flexible passive recreation space for picnicking, barbecues, and for formal and informal community events, things such as concerts, pop-up markets, and picnics. The next is the cultural trail. The cultural trail loops around the edge of the lawn and connects to existing east and west trails. This multi-use trail provides a wider surface to accommodate bikers and walkers, as well as joggers, and includes interpretive signage that celebrates the community's connection to Lake Erie. The third project is the bridge. Currently, I-90 is both a psychological as well as a physical barrier between the community and the lakefront. The land bridge connecting North and South Gordon Park provides an opportunity to create a more seamless and enjoyable connection over I-90 and helps to unify the two halves of Gordon Park along with the other spaces along the lakefront. The fourth project is the Pier. Fishing and being close to the water are two of the most popular things the community members enjoy about the Eastern Lakefront. The pier, extending out into the lake, will allow anglers and community members to experience what it's like to be out in the water, something only boaters and paddlers are able to experience now. The wide platform is envisioned not just as a typical pier, but as a multi-use public plaza extending over the water. Larger than a typical pier, it will provide spaces for a variety of activities, including fishing, walking, gathering, and other events. Complete Streets the Complete Streets project envisions a series of safer and more enjoyable neighborhood connections to the Eastern Lakefront. These streets will strengthen the current trail system and connect to the city's larger network of proposed cycle tracks, as well as dedicated space for pedestrians and bicyclists. They include street trees and other plantings. And finally, the Lake Placescape. The Lake Placescape provides something that is currently missing along the Eastern Lakefront: activities and spaces for kids. We heard through our engagement that adults enjoy the lakefront, but wish there were more activities and things for their children and grandchildren to enjoy. The Lake Placescape is a signature all ages and abilities playground with nature-based play features, and it's connected to the lawn and cultural trail. So as a refresher, here are the 6 projects, and we're gonna have another poll pop up for everyone to vote.
All right, I'm going to give people about 15 more seconds to log their responses. I feel like I should have some kind of Jeopardy music playing while the poll comes up. All right. Here are our results. It looks like the top rated goal was use dredge material to create more park space and habitat areas to buffer infrastructure. And the top project was the lawn, followed by the bridge.
So our third experience is the Connect with Nature experience. The Connect with Nature experience enhances existing nearshore and in-water habitats while creating new ecotypes and provides space for new immersive nature-based recreation. The goals of this experience are to create new greenway connections from the lakefront to the adjacent communities, provide an immersive nature-based experience in the heart of the city that includes birding, hiking, and other outdoor recreation, protect the shoreline and expand natural areas to maximize habitat space, and to celebrate the lakefront as a natural oasis and refuge within the city. So this experience looks at creating opportunities for you to engage with new habitat and natural spaces along the shore. The primary element of this concept is a new offshore barrier island built with dredge material. This will provide new immersive nature recreation experiences, as well as shield the shoreline from storm events and wave action, which allows for a more natural and softened lake edge. The first project, and we'll once again see all the highlighted ones. The first project is the island. Situated just off the shore, the island creates a new way to experience the lake. Visitors can walk or bike across the bridge or paddle out and wander through the vegetated trails, immersing themselves in a unique natural environment of Lake Erie. The second project is the Habitat Trail. The Habitat Trail meanders along the naturalized shoreline that includes marsh areas and wetland habitat. The trail connects the existing park spaces and new habitat areas, providing space for nature lovers, birders, and walkers to enjoy the environment. The third is the wetland. This is a series of immersive wetlands that are dotted along the shoreline. These wetlands provide new habitat for plant and animal species while protecting the shoreline and critical infrastructure. They have the additional benefit of improving water quality and increasing in-water habitat. The fourth project is the Overlook, which responds to the community's desire for more places to fish and areas where they can be closer to the water, with more viewing and observation. These areas take in picturesque views of Lake Erie and downtown Cleveland. And the walkway of the Overlook curves out from the Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve's northern point, providing a sweeping view of the lake and new areas to fish. The link is our response to one of the most popular and well-loved assets along the eastern lakefront. Many community members feel that the Gordon Park could be better connected to Rockefeller Park, and this asset could be more accessible with improvements to entry points. The link creates a new natural connection to the Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve under I-90 that connects back to the neighborhood and adjacent greenways along Rockefeller Park. This connection would also include the natural restoration of the Dome Brook outfall. And finally, the Greenways. The Greenways project envisions a series of green neighborhood connections that extend park spaces from lakefront back into the adjacent neighborhoods. These greenways, or green fingers, include necessary safety improvements for pedestrians and bikealists, new planting and street trees, and they utilize smaller vacant lots to create a string of pocket parks connected by these greenways. So as a refresher, here are the 6 projects. We've got one final poll for you guys.
All right, I'm going to give people a couple more seconds. If you haven't logged your response, log it now. All right. And here are results. Looks like the top rated goal was create new greenway connections from the lakefront to adjacent communities. And the top project was the Habitat Trail, followed thereafter by the island. Great. All right, well, thank you, William. So what I'm gonna do now is stop sharing my screen, and we are going to break out into 3 smaller breakout groups. So within each of those, you'll have a facilitator. William will have a group, Kelly will have a group, and I will be joining one along with John. And they're kind of random, so hopefully we have a good mix of project partners and community members. But if for some reason you're all project partners, I can mix you guys up when we're in there. So I'm going to open those right now, and we're going to spend probably about 40 minutes or so, just having some discussion and Q&A for folks on the call that might have some questions. And then we're also going to ask folks in those breakout groups to pick your one favorite project out of all of the projects that have been shown tonight. So what is your gold star project, the thing that you would invest in if you couldn't invest in anything else? So keep that in mind as you're having that discussion, and then we'll come back into the larger group and I'll give some wrap-up comments and some next steps for the process. So I'm opening those now.
One thing I noticed, Mary, is that basically of the prime, that everybody voted on, the other ones that flank that are within 10%. It's almost like you could pick the best 3 of 5 instead of just the 1 of 5 options.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I just want to ask, can folks who are not partners unmute themselves? I saw a hand raised. Just want to make sure you guys can unmute yourselves.
I just got an option to unmute.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure that folks can actually unmute themselves that are not co-hosts. Tom, it looks like you had your hand raised. Did you have a question?
Yes, there's 110 acres just north of Burke Lakefront Airport that's been a confined disposal facility for many years. Doesn't seem like you guys are even addressing that. That's a great natural area. It could be another similar thing to the Cleveland Nature Park.
Yeah, so Linda, I don't know if that's something you want to address from the port's perspective.
Sure. We currently use that facility to handle dredge material pulled out of the Cuyahoga River on a twice-a-year cycle. So our intent is to use those facilities as long as we can so that we don't have to create more CDF. As you heard, part of this project is to look at beneficial use of sediment. So pulling out what sediment is clean and can be used for habitat or softening the edge, but that is why it is not part of the study area, because it'll be a CDF for the foreseeable future.
Great. Thanks, Linda. Did that answer your question, Tom?
Well, no, not really, because it seems like historically Cleveland has had these great opportunities and they've just ignored them. Like, yes, that is being used now, but this is a whole pile of dredge material that we can easily pivot and use it for this other project or restore that area to natural areas.
The impact to that would be that we have nowhere to put dredge material that's pulled out from the river now. And the Cuyahoga River is a federally a shipping channel. So to keep it navigable for ships, it needs to be dredged. So, I do think one day far into the future, that is an opportunity. But using that as an asset rather than spending local money on looking for places to put that new sediment that's pulled out of the river, this is much more economical.
Great. Thanks.
Just to wrap it up, my point is it's an opportunity that we should include it in the plan. We're not coming up with a plan to implement today. We're coming up with a plan to implement in the future. That's 110 acres that's sitting there that has got the dredge material already. Let's bring it into the plan. Let's connect it to the plan with walkways or whatever, and it'd be a home run. You follow me? It's ready now. And I agree with you. Yes, we've got to put the dredge material somewhere today, and we're not going to implement this today. Let's look at it for the next five years down the road. I mean, this plan is probably a 30-year plan by the time you assemble all the pieces parts. But let's put this into the plan because it's an opportunity that's just sitting there.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think we're having some ongoing conversations with the airport as well in general in terms of, what we can and can't do. So that's something I'll note to kind of have a further conversation, and maybe it's something that's noted in the plan as a long-term opportunity once it's not being actively used for storage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where was Dike 14 where they filled now? Was that in the plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me bring up the presentation
Sure.
so that you can see. Whoops, excuse me. Go back to a map. Yeah, so the Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve is
okay.
the edge of the plan. Yeah, we should probably label it as both things because I know some people call it Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve and other people still call it Dike 14.
Okay.
I know, we're really trying to get away from right.
Well, yeah, right. That's old people.
Formerly known
Yeah.
as, right?
So it looks like that's an integral part of the plan that's already in place there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the, particularly in the nature focused scheme, we're looking at ways to improve access to it because we know, based on our surveys and conversations we've had with folks that people love it. They just wish that more people knew it was there and that it was a better use asset and linked to other assets along the lakefront.
Agree.
Great. Anyone else have any kind of questions about the presentation or things I can clarify?
I got another question.
Sure.
I'm looking at these green lines that run on what we call North Marginal and South Marginal Road. What is the plan for those green lines there? I notice it goes from the East 55th Marina and it heads west on the north, and obviously I guess that.
Are you talking about where it jumps across?
Yeah, right. What is the plan for? Is that something that's in your plan or in this plan? Is that just like a bikeway, or what is that going to be?
That's a great question. So one of the things, and these are shown in slightly different configurations for all three of them. And the intention there being that we want to kind of loop into the existing trail systems. So we want to make sure that those are incorporated in whatever scheme we end up with at the end here, whatever that hybrid concept looks like. But they might take slightly different forms in how we deal with some of the traffic issues. In this one, for example, we're showing an option where we would go to the other side of Marginal, so kind of cross at 55th because you have a little bit more room on that side. One of the things that we're looking at here is the space here is just really tight between the road and the yacht clubs and their property over here. So, there is some possibility that we could put a bike right of way through there to extend the trail, but we also want to explore the possibility of maybe jogging across for a portion and then coming back on the other side. So that's one of those kind of more system things that we're planning on looking at as a holistic piece of it. So if you remember early on in the presentation, I talked about kind of the nuts and bolts, which would include the trail systems, the parking, the circulation, making sure that that's all configured in whatever that final hybrid scheme looks like.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Any other questions? We can discuss projects if no one has any kind of individual questions. It'd be great to kind of get your read on what people voted for, so what were your kind of top projects in each of the categories and maybe why you voted for those?
I'm curious if,
Sure.
elements from one plan could be
Hi.
worked into another.
Absolutely.
Specifically, the kids' play area looks just, wonderful, a nice plan, obviously something I'm interested in at this point.
Yeah.
And, but I wouldn't want to say, hey, number 2 is my favorite just because of that, because there are aspects of the other plans that look really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So part of why we are kind of approaching it this way to create a hybrid concept is so that we can mix and match. Our goal here is to kind of understand the priorities and the goals of the community. So what are the projects that you all are most interested in that you would like to see implemented here, and then figure out what kind of that package of projects would be that would go into that hybrid concept. So, for example, if the playground is something that comes up as a really high priority, that would be something we'd look to integrate into that final plan that, might include the launch and, the pier. So it's kind of a mix and match situation to get us to the hybrid concept.
Thank you.
One thing I would say, Mary, I think as far as, melding all the concepts together, it seems like, at least within our poll, connecting neighborhoods is going to be key. And although in that poll, I think the Habitat Trail was voted as the top project, but I see a lot of overlap with that theme in regards to things like the Link, Greenways, the complete streets, and Blueways. There seems to be this idea of pedestrian connection in all 3 of the projects.
Yes.
And I think that, all these other things are quite lofty and big infrastructural changes, but, pedestrian connection, I think, is something that should definitely be weaved through however these concepts are, assembled together.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And one of the things that we want to do, what we're showing here is, you're right, these are kind of bigger projects. So these are more of those kind of long-term, most of them are long-term projects that we could implement along the lakefront. But in the final concept, we also want to include a package of smaller, more short-term projects that could be implemented on a shorter time frame. It would improve the overall visitor amenity quality, as well as safety of pedestrians. I think that's a great point. Anyone else have a project you really, it could be a project you dislike too? Were there any that kind of stood out as feeling like they didn't really belong on the Eastern Lakefront?
One idea, just going on the
Hi, Brian.
previous comment too, is just that a lot of the projects listed on the screen are basically access or pedestrian ways, that sort of thing. And so I guess in the process, as mentioned, it becomes kind of like a package in and of itself. And though it may be prioritized as to what can be done, there's, as mentioned, some short-term things that can be put together. But I don't think that necessarily, although they're color-coded and that sort of thing, it's certainly a mix and match situation, where all these things actually mesh. I don't think that there's anything that's necessarily too exclusive.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anyone else? I feel like there's some folks in the, go ahead.
I had one. The hills, it seemed like, at least from the axon that you showed, the hills were like on the opposite side of the highway.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be kind of like a constraint to the views? Or like, I don't know how high the hills would have to be to like look across the highway and then see the lake, just where it was positioned in the plan. Maybe I'm.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. So there's already a natural bluff on the other side of the highway. So we're kind of using the hills kind of piggyback off of that natural elevation. So you wouldn't necessarily have to go too much higher to get, those expansive views that we talk about in that project. But yeah, you're right. It is on the other side of I-90.
Mary, I think the land bridge looked really good in the one. Obviously, that would be an expensive option. So one thing I'm really curious about is the connectors on East 55th and East 72nd and into MLK. I think that's really critical to make,
Yeah.
make the neighborhood connection. I'm just curious if you can make some comments on what those connections would look like. I heard
Sure.
under the Shoreway at MLK, and then obviously, I guess it'd be over at East 55th, but like, what would that look like? What forms would those take?
Are you talking about the link in particular, or the neighborhood connections? I just want to
Well, I
clarify.
think both. Just getting over that
Sure.
highway, because the bridge that exists is miserable and nobody would go over it. So it's got to be a lot more substantial than that. So I'm curious what the
Yeah.
vision is.
So let me go to that axon so that I'm speaking to something real. So this is obviously a very cartoony representation of what that would look like and the alignment. So the thought being here, there is an existing pedestrian bridge that crosses at North and South Gordon Park. So our idea right now is that you would keep somewhat of a similar alignment so that you're kind of rising and falling in a somewhat similar place. I mean, it's not, the bridge is going to be much more substantial than what's there now, and that it would kind of take you a little further into North Gordon Park. And then the community connections, I think you're talking about, we're not looking necessarily at significantly realigning the current approach to the lakefront. It's more improving the amenities alongside, so making sure that there are contiguous bike lanes, there are safe sidewalks. So we're not necessarily, creating or removing any new overpasses in those community connections. The only place that we are exploring something similar to that would be in this one, where we're looking at that link project that's over at MLK. And this, could happen with or without, but we're exploring the option of what could happen if you removed some of that vehicular infrastructure and emphasize that Greenway connection back to MLK in a stronger fashion that would take you directly to the Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve. I don't know if that answered your questions. Okay, great.
Hey, Mary, I just got a question. Doesn't that already exist on MLK?
Yeah, so there is an underpass there. So what we're looking at, and this is obviously would be a longer term situation and would require some additional studies to see if it's fully feasible. But if you remember the current condition, there's a cloverleaf pattern of on-ramps to I-90 here. So this is looking at what could happen if you removed some of that vehicular infrastructure and streamlined the roadway, allowing more pedestrian access.
Got it.
Yeah, Mary, I think one of the things we had mentioned was maybe looking at that interchange and seeing, can we make a more seamless transition from those trails along MLK straight into the nature preserve? Right now, it's sort of a lot of barrier there, and it's not a real friendly place to walk through.
Yeah.
So without doing a ton of new overpasses or anything like that, use what we have and see what we can work with ODOT to redesign that a little bit.
Absolutely. And in the configuration we're showing, we're showing that that cloverleaf is completely gone. But I think, as Steve said, we're looking at, are there ways to do that without fully removing the infrastructure and keeping the on and off ramps, still functional, but maybe reconfigure what those look like so that we reclaim some of that space back for parkland.
And Doan Brook goes through those ramps too. So I think that you're talking about possibly daylighting Doan Brook.
Yep. That's also a consideration. If you see, it's a little hard to see in the little cartoon sketch, but there's a hint that we're looking at, restoration of, or at least a partial restoration of Doan Brook, because the actual configuration goes through the Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve. Great. Any other kind of comments or questions about specific projects?
Talk about the wetlands right there where 55th comes down into talk about that right there. Is that a pretty minor project doing the wetlands there? Since it is a low-lying area currently in there, and there is vacant land in there right now next to the apartment or wherever that apartment building is there. Is that an easy project?
Yeah, so there's, I don't know how easy is, I mean, I don't know, Vito, you're the numbers guy. You can correct me if easy is the right way to say that. But
Right.
in terms of existing barriers, there aren't that many. I think we've had conversations with the sewer district, so they do have an outfall that's right here, and they need to keep a portion that's right. It's not really easy to see in this, but it's right next to the shoreline. So they have, it's going to get kind of technical, but basically they have big nets that catch anything that's floatable that comes out of the sewer district or the sewer whenever you have a combined sewer overflow. So that needs to be maintained, but everything beyond that, so what's already starting to look kind of naturalized is mostly free game. So that's the area that we're looking at for the wetland. And just to kind of talk about this property, so it's vacant right now, but they're planning the second phase of the shoreline apartments.
Right.
So there's also some plans for, I think some open space that they're kind of building in as an amenity for that apartment building. So this is a project that we're hoping kind of, dovetail some of the water quality goals of the sewer district, as well as some of the amenity goals of the apartment complex. So I would say on the scale of building an island versus building the wetland, yes, it's easier. But yeah, I don't know if that fully answers your question, or Mark and Vito, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, the sewer district's putting a new storage tunnel there too that will limit quite a bit the amount of combined sewer overflow events that happen in that area.
Right.
But even with the new storage tunnel, building wetlands in the area would have some great water quality benefits in terms of filtration and nutrient reduction right at the outfall there. So there's definitely some great benefits in terms of water quality in the harbor if we get that one done.
Yeah, it can also be an opportunity for the developers to contribute to the project.
Mm-hmm.
And from my experience elsewhere, we were typically able to get developers to contribute to the general welfare of the community.
Mm-hmm.
While they were, getting the considerations that they needed for their development.
Yeah, so, that's a good point. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah,
Jeff. Okay.
So moving further west, then, none of the plans for anything none of these things that I've seen actually go past east or west of really 55th Street, kind of 54th Street. Is that the focus still is going to be east of that? Specifically, I'm talking about Forest City Yacht Club, and then moving down. I do see some green and yellow thing coming out of where the power plant is there. There's that. What's that piece?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So we're looking at, if you kind of look at the existing map of the site, a lot of what is in that area is, it's not necessarily privately owned, but it's privately leased at the moment.
Correct.
So when we're looking at kind of long-term interventions, we're trying to pinpoint areas that we think we could have the maximum impact. So one of those is this small sliver next to the Cleveland Public Power, which is actually a public park space right now. So building off of that. And then in this scenario, we're looking at, into how do we integrate Kirtland Park into the larger kind of collection of park spaces. But we're kind of constrained to a point with some of the privately operated areas, just given, the fact that they are leaseholders, and that, we're not necessarily going to open up full access on this side. We also were trying to be really careful with the federal shipping channel. If you notice, this dashed line comes in pretty far in over here. So there's not a lot of opportunity to really build out with dredge material there. And we're also getting super close to the airport at that point, where we run into a lot more regulations with what we can and can't do. So it wasn't necessarily that, we didn't want to focus on that. We wanted to kind of look at where our interventions could make the largest and maximum impact, and also connect back to the communities. So, we know that East 55th and 72nd are those existing community connections. So we wanted these new amenities to be accessible via those routes of transportation.
Got it.
Anyone else have any kind of questions or ideas? Anything we might have missed that you think we should have looked at a little bit closer?
This is Brian again. One thing I noticed when we were doing the preliminaries is that of the roster of where people came from attending tonight, no one came from the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think we had a couple of people who worked there, but no one that lived there.
Yeah, and that's not uncommon, but I think that it's really important that that be included, because what can leverage is to looking at some of the original dotted lines that included the project, included south of the railway, down to St. Clair. And there's lots of opportunity down there. There's also people living down there. I know from previous conversations, it was mentioned that there were challenges catching up with the community development corporations because of the election, which is over, I think. And catching up with them, and also places which I would encourage would be at 66 in St. Clair is St. Martin de Porres High School. And it's a pretty innovative high school with really engaged faculty and students and that sort of thing. And I think it could be a good avenue into the community. And I think that they would be open to having their kids chime in on this. And realistically, it's the kids who are going to be taking advantage of this in the future.
Yeah, Brian, that's a great point. So they're actually on our steering committee, or the stakeholder committee rather. So we have had, Kelly has had a couple of conversations with them, but I will definitely, bring that up again. I think this is a great part to really engage them a little bit more directly. That's what we were, that was one of the goals of the workshops in the summer. It's a little bit difficult because the weather's not great right now. But in the summer, it was great because we were able to get folks who, live or work in the neighborhood involved, and also do some really informative intercept surveys while we were out doing the workshops. So yeah, we're still continuing to reach out and continuing to do more engagement. We also have everything available online, so we've been directing that through the CDCs, who are also really involved in the project team and putting the word out there. But yeah, we're continuing to push toward that. But yeah, I think that's one of the challenges of the technology barriers and doing meetings like this, is not getting that really engaged population from the neighborhood involved. Yeah. Ryan, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, good night. I was just wondering how you guys plan to address the 72nd launch ramp and the island that sits in the middle of the lake. As far as boat traffic, that launch ramp sees a whole lot of inexperienced boaters. And I was wondering if that was considered with the island sitting not in the middle of everything, but quite out there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I can let Vito and Mark chime in on this as well, but one of the things that we're planning on, again, this is really kind of that cereal box illustration of what this could look like. So everything is enlarged to look a little bit bigger, like the kayakers are enormous, for example. So we would be, going through a process of making sure that those channels are navigable and safe for boaters, particularly ones that are currently using the space.
Okay, thank you.
Great. We have about 7 minutes before I bring folks back into the larger group. And I wanted to get you guys to vote in the chat. I think you guys can vote in the chat. Are you able to see the chat?
Yes.
Okay, great.
There's a button you have to click. It's not up unless you click the button.
I feel like I see all of the chats instead of the individual one for the group. But if you guys can write in the chat, so I have these up. So if you only had one project that you can invest in, so you had an unlimited budget, but only for one project, what would that project be, and which project would you invest in?
Oops.
I don't know if I get a vote from the design team, Mary, but I'd love to design an island.
I guess there's enough people. I could just go around. Ryan, what would be, or okay, so Mark, yours would be the island. Okay. What about you, Ryan?
I think I'll go with the island.
Okay.
That's providing that we can. It's still navigable to boaters.
I will write that down with that caveat. What about you, Steve?
I would do the Lake Placescape.
Okay.
But I want to redesign it from what's here. The Cleveland Metro Park Zoo has a really fantastic like natural playground.
Okay.
And I was just thinking there's nowhere in this area for kids to play in the woods. So some sort of natural type playground would get my vote if I can sort of make up my own vote.
Noted. What about you, Linda?
I have a really hard time choosing between the land bridge and the Overlook.
Okay. All right, David?
I actually like the cove, letting people get down to the water.
Cool. What about you, Brian? Brian G. There's two Brians. Brian Gibbons.
Yeah, the land bridge is one that I had an interest in, but yeah, I'd say that and the island.
Okay. Vito?
It's a loaded question. I like the island because you can cover many, many things. You're building real estate. From that, it's a clean slate or, bare kind of canvas that you can plant trees, have picnics, playgrounds, and you name it, it's there once you create the real estate. And it gives you nature preserve and a walk. And granted, it's not going to happen overnight, but, something that will eventually turn into something really nice.
Great. All right, Jeffrey.
I think that I would probably do the lawn with a hybrid to the cove.
Okay. All right, Brian Shriver.
I mean, like as far as the features, I like the land bridge and the Lake Placescape in design 2. The overall look, I like design 3 a little bit better with that island, but as far as the two features that stood out, the play area and that land bridge to make sure there's good connections back to the south part of Gordon Park.
Yeah. I'm assuming that's your daughter with you?
Yeah.
What's your vote? Do you want to vote?
The blue or the pink or the green?
I like the pink. I want the pink.
The pink one? The
Yeah,
Playscape?
option 2. Yeah.
I also want the bridge.
Okay, playground and bridge. I got it. All right, Tom?
Well, as a practical matter, I don't know if the island would ever get built because, I mean, that's going to be extremely expensive. The lawn is sort of a compromise to that, where it would connect it easier to the shoreline. But I think ultimately what we'll see is a bike trail or boardwalk all along the lakefront. That's probably the most practical and most easily to accomplish. So I guess I would vote for the lawn or the boardwalk.
Okay. Thank you. Willard?
Am I on?
Yep, you are on. We can hear you.
I'm on the phone.
You can't see any of them.
Yeah, I can't see anything, but I went through it online.
Oh, great.
I'm a touch guy, so I like the launch. I think getting people engaged in the water, especially if you have some of the features that can the cove or the island where there's some shelter, from the lake on most days. That's what that's why I like the lake.
Great. Andrew?
Probably have to say the cove or the island, some combination thereof.
Great. And then I don't have a name. It's just Aspire Cuyahoga County.
Sorry. I did the chat. This is really difficult because I'm a cyclist. So I go down the marginal like 3-4 times a week. So the lawn for me, it's I already see that. I hate to be negative, but to me, like the Cove, it looks like Cleveland. It's bringing natural, plantings. And as I'm cycling, I like looking at, different things. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the island too, but I just don't see it feasible. I mean, it's super, super cool. So, but the problem I have with the boardwalk, and I hate to be, is when you cycle, and I'm going very fast, it's not safe for me to cycle on the boardwalk. I would need to have another
another
point.
path.
Yeah. And a lot of the cyclists feel, I think, the same way. Like I said, this is very difficult because I love the bridge too, because I hate that cutting. I wish the freeway wasn't here, whatever, but it's, I kind of like the bridge too. I can't pick one.
It's
I
hard
like
to
a lot of them.
decide, right?
Yeah,
It's hard to decide.
But I thought a lot of good work. I mean, a lot of really good, solutions, and really, I'm very impressed. Very good. Very
Great. Well, thank you. What's your name? All I have is the Spire, Greater Cleveland.
Like where I work, Tony.
Tony? Okay,
Yeah,
great.
Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, John. John.
And there we go. And was deep on mute. I've heard so many great ideas and definitely been following along with the images. I'm inspired by all the discussion of so many connections back to the neighborhood and the interest in the bridge. I'm really excited by the shoreline destinations of how what people do when they get there, the linear paths, the kayak launch and things. And then that experience of either a big lawn or a place for big events. So I'm just inspired by kind of all of those things. I'm not sure I should get a vote, but I'm going to plug the ecological balance here just as part of the rest of the mix, because I think that if we could add that to everything that people have emphasized on this call, we've got a really nice complete picture. So I'd go with the wetland, as a component of the island, or as a component of what you experience from the shore, or experience from a kayak after you've launched. And I'm gonna put that one in there.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'm gonna bring the breakout groups back in a couple of minutes. Did anything kind of shake out or questions in those? Everyone voting, I want to make sure I've answered everyone's questions. You can also go online and leave additional comments if there's something you didn't think about tonight that you want to make sure we know. We'll be reading all of those responses in the coming weeks. Oh, looks like Tom and Ryan have your hand up. Go ahead, Tom.
I don't know. I haven't really been following this. Tonight I did, but in the past, what is the timeline for this?
Yeah.
And what is the budget and how will it get built?
Do you mean the budget for implementation?
Yes.
So that's going to be worked out. So that's part of our plan, is looking at funding sources for everything that we proposed. So that has not yet been set. We are looking to wrap up this initial design piece in May. So that's when our grant period is ending. So you'll see the final hybrid concept. We have our next Zoom meeting, which I'll say in the bigger group, is April 22nd. So save the date for that. We'll also have ways to engage online if you're not able to make that meeting.
Okay.
Great. And then I think, Ryan, you had your hand up or a question?
That answered my question.
Oh, great. Okay, 2 for 1. All right. Well, I'm going to send everyone back into the main group. You should be prompted to return to that one. If not, I think if you do nothing, you'll eventually go back in there. But I will see you all in a few minutes. All right. I think everyone is back with us, right? Okay, everyone's back in. Did everyone have good breakout group discussions?
Not enough time, as always.
There's never enough time. Even when we could build in 2 hours and yeah, it would never be enough. So I don't know if each of the individual breakout, we have enough time, I think, just to kind of do a quick recap of your discussions for the larger group, in case you kind of had different discussions. It would be interesting to hear what you guys talked about. So Kelly, I don't know if you want to go first.
Sure. It was a really nice format to have just more of a, as normal of a on-screen discussion as we can have. But I learned a lot about the perspective of the lake from boaters and the concern about some of the proposed features and thinking about safety. I think one of the final comments that was made is how disorienting it can be to be out on the lake looking back toward the shore with all the various lights that are there. So just keeping that in mind with whatever we design. We did have people that liked the pier, people that liked the island, people that liked the overlook. But I think what I heard a lot was connecting to the neighborhoods and connecting what's there and really building off the assets that we have seemed to resonate with people a lot. And I had a great group. I didn't quite manage it, so there are a few people that weren't heard at the end, so I'll apologize for that here. So thanks.
Great, thanks. William, I don't know if you want to, or if Keiko wants to do it, whoever.
I'm happy to jump in there and Keiko can tag team if she has anything to add. Similar to Kelly, I have to apologize. I think we didn't get to everyone in our group, but we had some great conversations. Explicitly, we talked a lot about the neighborhood connections and how important whatever the final concept that comes out of this is taking into account the neighborhood connections and also making sure that we continue to work hard to make better engagement with the people who live in the neighborhood. Seeing as on this call, we don't have too many participants that are actual residents of the adjacent neighborhoods. Additionally, just thinking about how we're going to not lose out on some of the great aspects of each concept when we mold them all together. We had a lot of comments about the ability to touch the water, but also the preservation of habitat and making sure that we're managing any sort of new recreation spaces such as boat launches, making sure that we're, if there's going to be recreational kayaking, that we're taking into account where they are going to be kayaking and what kind of water conditions they'll be in. And we had a great recommendation of maybe thinking about the illustration and sending them westward instead of eastward out of the cove.
Yeah, and I think another aspect is how we can continue to talk about this project. And one of the things to bring up a great point is the early action item to make sure we are prioritizing, but make sure something happens on site and bringing people. That's going to be much more spreading the word about the project and value of the waterfront. I think that's a great point that folks bring up as well.
Great, those sound like great discussions. So I'll recap our group really quickly, and then Steve, Linda, if I'm missing anything, because I think we touched on a lot of things in our group. Talked a lot about how the hybrid concept would be formed. So this idea of kind of mixing and matching projects. So we went into that a little bit more. We did touch on the engaging the community piece. So I think, having some of those smaller focus groups, St. Martin de Porres was brought up. So I think, kind of reaching back out to them, doing some additional kind of specific outreach. I know we're having conversations with the CDCs, but I think doing more of that to make sure that their input is logged in this process. We also had some comments about navigation channels and boaters. So that's something that, we're going to kind of look at more closely as we're doing the hybrid concept. I think we also had the youngest participant in our group. We had a young girl who joined us with her father and voted for the Placescape. So that was fun. Just wanted to put that in there. And then I think our voting was, I think people had a hard time kind of choosing which project they would invest in as their number one project. I think, there's some ideas of, what kind of is more practical and what might get implemented versus what would be a really great project to see, but would require a lot of investment. So those are, again, considerations that we're also thinking about from the project team side. Linda, Steve, I don't know if there's anything I missed.
No, I think you covered it all. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that people had a hard time choosing just one. But a lot of interest in implementation going forward.
Great. Awesome. I don't know if anyone from anyone else who was in a group has anything else to add before I go over the next steps. Otherwise, I might get you guys out of here 5 minutes early, which has never happened. All right. So just to kind of finish up the presentation, I wanted to leave you guys with some next steps. So again, we're going to be going back. The engagement that we have live right now is going to stay live for the next few weeks. So if you haven't had, or if your friends or family or folks that you know that live in the neighborhood are interested, haven't had a chance to review the concepts and log their vote on what projects they think are most important and what goals they would want to prioritize, please share those links with them. Oops, let me go forward. So we have a number of interactive tools online. There's a shorter version, which is a type form survey that includes videos of me presenting exactly what you heard tonight and getting to choose your projects. And then there's a longer version that's a little bit more of like a map-based explorer. So you can take your time and look at the projects, but answer the same questions. You can also send an email to us at cheers@clevelandmetroparks.com. If there's something that you wanted to say tonight, but you didn't get a chance to say in your breakout group, please follow up with us. We'd love to hear anything you have to say. We also have a phone number for those who are maybe not as technically or digitally inclined. And then the most important thing, save the date for our upcoming meeting, April 22nd. We're going to have our final community meeting, which will be an opportunity for you to see the hybrid concept. All right. And then final plug, and I promise this is the final one. If you have not taken the time to do the virtual scavenger hunt, I know the weather is quite cold, but it's still kind of a fun activity. If you want to go out and explore some of the existing conditions on the lakefront, especially with the lens of seeing the projects, it would be a good idea, to get out there, look at some of these projects and be entered to win a Dave's gift card.
We should give like double entries next week because we're supposed to have a polar vortex.
Really?
So if you go out to the lake next week, you really you get entered into the drawing twice. I think.
I thought we just had one.
Right. Oh no.
Mary, if I can just chime in real quick.
Yeah,
one thing I do want to say, with all of the tools that are at the fingertips of everyone, we can't rely just on the agencies or consultants to engage our friends, family, and people we know. That's up to us, and we have to take ownership of that. So with the links and the tools that are provided, it's important that whether you're a CDC agency or whatever your constituency group is, and even if you live near and around the community and you're having dinner, bring it up with your family members. Ask them, do they want to take a quick survey? Ask them, do they know about the waterfront? That's really how you get penetration. It's not just through a planning process. It's part of just connecting as people, and sharing information. We are all obviously stakeholders, whether you live in the city of Cleveland, whether you live right adjacent, to the waterfront. But we have to start thinking about these assets like that and having conversations at a very human level. And it does not have to be so formalized, particularly if you have tools that allow you to become the consultant, quite frankly, and talk to your friends and family about this. And that's really how you get true engagement and true involvement is taking ownership yourself. So I just want to emphasize that.
Yeah, thank you. That is a great point to leave on, Freddie.
Great.
I love that wrap up. That wasn't even
Again.
planned. But yes, please, if you know anyone who might be interested in the process or the project, please share with them. We can also provide you with any materials that you might need. Those are all available on the website, but if you email us, we will also give you direct files and links. We're happy to share anything with y'all. So with that, I will leave the QR code. Someone requested the QR code to be put back up. So here it is. And I will be speaking to you soon. And if anything comes up in the meantime, please, again, feel free to reach out and ask us questions or provide us with additional input. Looking forward to hearing from y'all. Thank
And
you.
Mary, can we access the QR code and everything through social media links at all?
Yeah. So there, Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are social posts up for Metro Parks for all of these. I can also provide you with the files if you want to post them yourself. So feel free to reach out to me and I can give you a package of kind of a social package that you can put out there.
Yeah, I think that'd be great for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and usually when, like, I know if our social folks post, they try to tag all the partners at least, so then it's easy for other social people to kind of retweet or post on Instagram or kind of. But yeah, all the help that we can get. This is a great time to think about the lakefront and dream of sunny days.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. We really appreciate your input and taking the time out to spend a Tuesday evening with us. So thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks a lot.